Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Steven, and these are 6 huge questions that were answered in episode 4 of WandaVision. The first question on everybody's mind, I guess, is who is causing all these events to happen. This was actually answered in episode 4 because after being kicked out of Westview by Wanda, Monica Rambeau, who was known in Wanda's show, she was known as Geraldine. Like that's the character she played when she was in Westview in WandaVision. Her name was Geraldine. She wakes up surrounded by the sword agents outside of that are outside the bubble, and she tells them that it's all Wanda. She says it's Wanda, it's all Wanda, indicating that Wanda is actually responsible for everything that's going on. Um, this could also be just what Monica believes it's all Wanda, but there's actually something else at play or some other force here. That's still not necessarily clear enough just yet, but just her saying that alone, from having been in there to experience that, seems to make it seem like Wanda is actually responsible for this. And that I guess leaves another question: how is she doing this? I guess why is she doing this even? Because that's not really clear either yet. I mean, I'm sure they'll clear that up in the next 5 episodes because I think there's only 9. The fact that she specifically points out that Wanda is responsible for it all, basically, that reveals the secret of the show. That yes, Wanda is doing this. Wanda is making this show happen. She sort of has this pocket reality created and things like that. So that is all Wanda doing it, whether she's doing it herself or through somebody influencing her to do that, or even she's mind controlled and she's doing it too. Because she seems to break away from character every once in a while on the show as well, which kind of indicates that maybe she's under some sort of spell as well. So I guess we'll have to wait and see further exactly what it is, but it's definitely Wanda is involved somehow, at least according to Monica, which clears a lot of this up from the first 3 episodes that we've seen. So yeah, I mean that's a big insight into the show so far. The next big question, I guess, is what is Westview and where is it located? We find that out in episode 4 as well. It is a normal town in New Jersey that was erased from existence by Wanda. Basically, this episode showed us things from the outside perspective. So, like, from the perspective of the agents of S.W.O.R.D. that have, been watching Wanda. Um, and, Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man is back, and he's working with S.W.O.R.D. to figure out. It was basically boiled down to a missing persons case, but it's actually a missing town case because this whole town was just suddenly erased from existence. Nobody knows why. Um, and him and Monica Rambeau are trying to look into that. So it was kind of a flashback, a little bit of how Monica got there before she got sucked into Wanda's world. And we find out that not only was the whole town basically erased from existence, it doesn't exist anymore in our reality, but of course it is there in Wanda's show, so it was kind of just there's a force field around it, so that kind of made it disappear, I guess. But also, people's memories of Westview have seemingly been completely erased as well, causing them to think it doesn't even exist, except that there's a sign that says Westview. It says there's a population of over 1,000 people. It might have been a lot more than that, but I just said over 1,000 because I forget the exact number he says, but we haven't even seen that many people in the show yet, which makes me think that some other people from that town, if there's a population of 1,000 people, we've probably seen maybe 10 people total that have actually had a part to play in the show so far, that Wanda's actually interacted with in the show. So the fact that there's over 1,000 people in this town and we've only seen 10 of them, that leads me to think that some people are either missing or being preserved somewhere until it's their time to play a role in Wanda's show. Like, until they're needed as characters in Wanda's sitcom. Which is kind of even scarier to think about, like, where are they right now? Because are they just, like, kind of frozen somewhere or something, and like waiting for their call? Like, they're out of the curtain on the stage waiting to come on, you know? Because it's like a show, so it kind of makes you wonder, where are all these other people at? But yeah, just the fact that it was erased from existence and nobody remembers that Westview exists. Like, there were these two cops standing there that Jimmy Woo was talking to, and they basically said Westview doesn't exist, because he kept talking about Westview, and they're like, it's not here, it doesn't exist. But they're from Eastview, which I guess is nearby or on the other side or whatever. But the fact that nobody remembers this, it just shows how powerful Wanda is, because we know she's doing this according to Monica from later on when Monica's kicked out of there. So that shows kind of how powerful Wanda really is, if she can erase not only a whole town out of existence, but erase everybody's memories that this town ever even existed in the first place. Just shows you how powerful Wanda is, and that's kind of scary to think for, like, the future of the MCU. Like, this is how powerful. Imagine how powerful she's going to be on a global scale, not just in this, contained in this one little town. I mean, that's probably why she's going to be a big threat. It might even be the villain in the new Doctor Strange movie. We'll have to wait and see, because she is confirmed to be in that. So this just shows, I don't know if she's slowly learning how powerful she really is, or what, or how she's able to do that. If she's even the one erasing people's memories from it, that's another question. Like, if somebody else is doing this, did they erase people's memories of Westview? Like, we don't know yet, so that kind of raises another question. But it's still, it's just a weird and a strange anomaly that is going on, that I'm kind of intrigued by now. Honestly, it's like this huge mystery now, because they even mentioned that they interviewed some family members of the people from Westview, and they don't even remember that these people exist. So, like, they might have a brother that lived in Westview, and he just doesn't even remember having a brother. So it's like, that's how powerful whoever is doing this really is. Another big question that was answered in episode 4 of WandaVision was, who are these other characters that Wanda interacts with? Because we've been wondering, she sees all these people that are, like, on her show. They're different characters that she interacts with, but who exactly are they? Like, were they created by whoever's doing that? Or are they just like a figment of her imagination? Are they really there? But knowing that this is an actual town, the Westview actually exists as an actual town, we find out that these people are actually people that lived in that town. And have been brainwashed into starring in her show. They're brainwashed into acting like characters. And the agents of S.W.O.R.D. that are watching this in this episode were able to figure out who each of these people are. Like, they had a file on each of these people after, I guess, facial recognition and things like that. They go back and rewind Wanda's TV show to actually see who these people are, and then they were able to figure out these are real people that are basically cast as these characters, just like anybody would be in a normal TV show or movie. In Wanda's mind, in this little reality bubble she has, they are characters on this TV show she's created. The interesting thing about this, though, is that they had a profile on everyone we've seen in Wanda's show except for Agnes. Like, there was a file for Mr. and Mrs. Hart from the first episode. There was a file for his neighbor Herb and everybody else that they've come into contact with, and even Dottie has someone who's actually, like, they all had real names outside of WandaVision except for Agnes, which leads me to believe that Agnes isn't who she says she is. She's either the one in control of all of this, or she's been put here by somebody to make sure Wanda doesn't slip up or lose control of this reality and things like that. So, but also they didn't even mention that they don't know who Agnes is. Like, that didn't come up in like a quick line or something, like we don't know who this Agnes person is, we're still waiting on confirmation or something along those lines. They didn't even mention Agnes, but she is clearly on the screen, so it makes you wonder what's going on with her, because who will she turn out to be? Who will we find out that she is? Now, here's a question I had about this show, like way back at the beginning. I posted a list of like at least 5 questions that I had after watching the first 2 episodes of WandaVision, so go check that out if you haven't seen that video that I did. One of the questions I had from that was who exactly is watching Wanda? Like, we know it's an agent of S.W.O.R.D. now, but it's actually Darcy Lewis from the first 2 Thor movies. She was Jane Foster's sidekick. Um, she was brought in to help S.W.O.R.D. figure out what is going on, because we see, like I said, we see this from the outside perspective, so we see it from, because the whole episode starts off with like Monica Rambeau and how she got into all this, and then she meets Darcy Lewis, like Darcy's brought in, so she, Jimmy Woo, and Monica all sort of have to figure this out together along with the other S.W.O.R.D. agents that are there. But the person we saw from the end of the first episode of WandaVision that was watching it on the screen was Darcy Lewis, because they showed that scene again. It shows her writing in a notebook, and she, in this episode, was able to figure out, like, the way she was able to figure it out is that it has an energy, the energy surrounding Westview is some sort of cosmic energy that has created this sitcom reality, which they're able to watch through an old TV in the same way that we watch WandaVision, like on a screen. And this is how they're able to monitor everything that goes on inside Westview. And even Jimmy Woo basically sums it up. He says, like, so the universe created a sitcom with starring 2 Avengers, like, because she said the cosmic energy sort of dates back to the Big Bang, which, as we know, resulted in or from the Infinity Stones. And Wanda got her powers mostly from an Infinity Stone, or at least her powers got enhanced from an Infinity Stone, which was the Mind Stone. So that kind of ties everything back together with the Infinity Stones now. And so, like, she has some of the powers of the Infinity Stones to create this town and to put a barrier around it and erase it from existence, everything else. That shows how powerful Wanda is and how dangerous she is as well. It was nice to see Darcy Lewis back, though, because we haven't seen her since Thor the Dark World. We didn't really see Jane Foster either until Avengers Endgame, when they went back in time to the events of Thor the Dark World. But so Darcy Lewis at least playing a major role in the MCU, at least right now, same as like Jimmy Woo and even Monica Rambeau going forward. We're gonna see exactly what how big of a role she's gonna play in the future of the MCU. So seeing all them brought in for this first series for Phase 4 makes it seem like they have bigger roles in store for all of them going forward. I don't know if any of them are going to be in the Doctor Strange movie to sort of help him contain Wanda. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Now, one of the biggest questions that I have, and I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what exactly happens when Wanda rewinds time in the show? We got an answer to that in this episode as well, because it took us back, like, into the episode, like from last week, when Wanda realized that Monica or Geraldine wasn't who she said she was, and she kicked her out, and all we saw was Wanda sort of walking toward her, and then a little bit later Vision walks in and asks her what happened to Geraldine, and she just said she had to run home. So originally that's all we saw. But then in this episode, we see it through the eyes of the S.W.O.R.D. agents who are watching it on the TV show. And to them, everything that Wanda rewinds or reverses or gets rid of or pushes out looks like a simple jump cut or an edit, the same way a normal TV show or movie looks after a scene is cut out. Like, you see someone jumps from one thing to another because there was a scene or something was removed. This is different from how we actually see it when we're inside the show watching it from Wanda's perspective, though, because it's actually revealed that it shows basically an extended clip of what happened, and reveals to us that Wanda actually, like, sort of went back to how she was in Age of Ultron. Like, she used her red energy powers to push Monica out. She said, "You're an outsider and a threat to this world, and I want you gone." And she shoves her through, like, the walls and stuff, and she flies out of that pocket reality, out of Westview, and that's when Monica reveals, like I said earlier, that it was all Wanda. That's when she's found by the Sword Agents. This makes it more terrifying to know that the people watching from the outside can't actually see what's going on because Wanda doesn't want them to. She's basically editing them out of existence. So, like, when the beekeeper came in, we don't ever see really what happened to him. We just know he came in, she says no, and rewinds it. But if they're watching it on the screen, like we were, all they're going to see is he's there, he's gone. That's what even Darcy Lewis was surprised by that. She saw Monica was there, and then she wasn't there. That's how Wanda does it. It's kind of like she's going in and editing scenes out, but it's all in her mind, or her powers are doing it, or whatever. So I thought that was really interesting, like, because I was wondering that too. I said, what exactly happens? Like, do they go in reverse and, like, haven't made it in here or something like that? But this is really revealing. They revealed a lot in this episode just from the outside perspective, and I'm sure there's a lot more questions and a lot more things that are going to happen on the show that's going to lead us to even more questions down the road. But just the fact that that's what it looks like to us, is that they're there, then they're not. It's like she edited it out. It makes it seem like Wanda is the director of this show. She makes things happen or not happen. If she doesn't like it, she gets rid of it. She pushes it out of the show. That's how this works in her little reality. And to them in the outside world, all they see is a TV show. Finally, I guess the biggest question that we all have is, how is Vision alive? The simple answer to this question, based off of what we saw in episode 4, is he's not alive at all. Because there's a scene where Wanda sort of breaks character. She, after kicking Monica out, she, like, kind of broke character for a second, like, kind of wasn't focused on the reality she's in. And when Vision walks into the room, she looks up at him, and he's a corpse again. How he looked when Thanos smashed his head in. Like, he has the big hole in his head from where Thanos ripped out the Mind Stone, and he's gray. Like, he's a completely gray body, but then immediately she, like, blinks and sees him as his normal red and green self again. This means Vision is still dead, and he's sort of walking around in Wanda's little world, basically as a walking corpse, which is kind of creepy if you think about it. Because even Darcy Lewis questioned when she first saw Vision and Wanda, like, in the show, she said, I know the world's been crazy lately, but isn't he dead? Not blipped, but dead. Like, so they all know Vision was dead, but he's not in this show. And now we know he actually is. He's alive because Wanda wants him to be, but she's moving his corpse around, essentially. I don't even know if she just recreates his voice and all that, or maybe this is the way she's recharging him, sort of like using a battery from a TV to kind of recharge him, but it's also created this weird reality or something along those lines. I don't know, there's a big mystery there as well. But yeah, Vision is definitely not alive. Now, a couple questions that I feel like still need answering. How long exactly has SWORD been in operation? We were told in this episode that Monica's mother, Maria Rambeau, who was from Captain Marvel, who was Carol Danvers' best friend, she was one of the founders of SWORD, which basically means that SWORD isn't like an offshoot of S.H.I.E.L.D. or wasn't just the name of S.H.I.E.L.D. changed to SWORD, but it's actually a whole new separate thing, I guess. But what we're not told is exactly when SWORD was formed or founded. Like, how long after Avengers Endgame was it created? Has it been around for a while and they just didn't help out with the events of the MCU because S.H.I.E.L.D. was already doing that? Or was it formed during the 5-year period between Infinity War and Endgame after, like, everyone was snapped out of existence? Like, did they sort of come in as, like, this new thing to protect everybody? But how long has SWORD been around? Like, we don't really get the answer. I hope we do on this show, at least, because then I feel like Sword is going to be a major player in Phase 4. Like, we're going to see it through probably through all the TV series. Maybe not the Loki one, but like Falcon and Winter Soldier, we'll probably see Sword again. We'll probably see them in some of the upcoming movies as well. So it's like, how long? I just want to know, how long have they been in operation? And one last question: how long after Avengers Endgame does this show actually take place? Because the last time we see Wanda was at Tony Stark's funeral at the end of Endgame, and it's never really specified um, exactly when the events of WandaVision take place. Is it a couple years, or days, or weeks, or months after Endgame? We don't really know, but I hope that the show actually reveals this, because that would kind of shed some light on what's going on. Like, if it's immediately after Endgame, then Wanda's definitely still grieving the loss of Vision, and that's why she's doing this. If it's several years after Endgame, like, I guess it all depends on the time frame that all these movies are going to take place, because we know, at least in MCU canon right now, Endgame was in 2023, so we don't know how long after that Wanda started doing this. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. So there you go, guys. That was basically my recap of episode 4 of WandaVision and some of the biggest questions that were answered from the show. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments section. What are some questions that you have about the show that may or may not have been answered, or some theories you have on the show? I'd love to hear those as well. And I hope you're enjoying WandaVision, because I am, and it seems to be getting a lot better. I'm looking forward to the future of the series. So take care, everybody. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there.
Subscribe.